Welcome everyone to today's Midnight 6.6 training session. Today's session will be on the reporting aspect of Midnight. In particular, we'll be looking at how to create reports, how to edit reports to a very basic degree, how to save backups of reports, and how to configure how they are extracted out of Midnight, either as a PDF or a file that would be compatible with another program that you may be using. To start things off, for this training, we'll be looking at the reports menu in the admin setup. We'll first take a look in the admin gear under the reports object menu. In here, you'll find all of the reports that are currently on your website. You'll see quite a few columns in here, and some will be relevant in certain areas, while others will be relevant across the board as far as reporting goes. From left to right, you'll see that there is the report name and also a display name. The report name column represents data for what you would add into a report and is something that we here at Midnight see on the back end. The display name is what you, as the user, see the report called. For example, you'll see that this first report active job detail doesn't include any spaces under the report name, but under the display name it does. And if we were to look up the report in the reports module, this is what we'd see it called. The report type is where the report can be located. Certain report types will have a dedicated module in which those reports would appear under. For instance, order report will appear within the orders themselves. Customer reports will appear in customers found within the CRM, as well as under the customer reports list in the report module. And other reports like sales reports and accounting reports usually don't have a dedicated module. They'll specifically appear within the reports module under their respective category. If we click this reports module button, we can get a view of this. The active job detail report that we see under our job costing report list is down here, so that way we can identify our display name as being utilized. Others like the customer report, we'll see here. And if we were to look in the CRM, we'd see them under each customer's record. The clone from lets you know if a report was custom created, and if so, what report it was based on. Creating reports in Midnight requires that you utilize a base report with which to identify the report as being cloned from. Use creating and associating data to a report isn't something that's super simple to do. Copying or cloning a report is the simplest way to build a new version of a report for yourself. Additionally, when you create a report, you'll have a new version that you can rename to something that makes more sense for what your needs may be. And also, during our updates, in which we jump from version to version, for instance, when we go from our current 6.6 to version 6.7, our standard reports are reverted back to their original functionality. That way, any optimizations that are made to them to, say, run faster or show new information can be made without issue. Doing that means that any changes you make to one of our standard reports will be reverted. However, custom created reports, or reports that are identified as having a report that they're cloned from, will not be affected by our patch update. So you can rest assuredly knowing that your report customizations will be untouched. Speaking of report customization, the last updated and last updated by column will show you one, the day in which the report was created, and two, if it was updated, who it was that made the change. In these cases, we can see that I myself had made a change to this bankruptcy check report on December 27th in 2018. If another user had made a change after me, then their change timestamp and name will be listed. The reports listed here are all active by default. Midnight doesn't support deleting reports. However, you can deactivate them, which hides them from display everywhere except for an inactive reports list. The search filter here at the top allows you to punch in values and return data based on what it is that you're trying to simplify and sort and filter by. For instance, if we're looking at customer reports, we could type in customer under the display name, and we'll see all the customer reports come in, including this one under the sales reports list. If we were to change this active from yes to no, then we'd see any inactive reports that fell within this criteria. If we have no other search criteria, then we can see all of the custom reports that are currently inactive, as well as our standard reports that we've turned off, perhaps due to not needing them for one reason or another and not wanting them to clutter up our reports list. The other features that we see here on the right impact some behavior of the report themselves. If you're utilizing your dynamic job board, then you may have certain reports that you need to display on the DJB. What this refers to is that if you have an order on the dynamic job board that you'd like to pull up your report within, if you have the Show on DJB feature set to yes, then when you attempt to open up that order on the job board, either by clicking it in the task view or the order view, you'll have a list of available reports to select and pull up without having to re-enter the job itself through the main interface. You'll see these listed here. The Show All Pages feature, if enabled, allows a report that would be a multi-page report to show all pages at once, meaning that you could simply scroll through the entire list of pages one by one, much like a PDF. Alternatively, if you have it set to no, then you won't have them all loaded, and then when you scroll from top to bottom, you'll just go from the top of your current page down to the bottom of your current page, and you can jump to the next page by clicking the next page button within the report. One example can be here in my sales report. In this case, if we run my report for a very extended period of time, we'll see we have 11 pages worth of information. If I were to scroll down and have this set to show all pages, then we'd be able to jump from page to page entirely. But do note that this could be a problem for any reports that you have that have a lot of information to display, such as a customer list for a database that could have thousands of customers. Trying to render and create that report for you to scroll through all of those pages could take some time and add delay to the report's load speed, whereas loading one page at a time allows the report to load much faster. The filter by user is a security feature, where that if you have specific user security rights, then those reports can only be accessed by that particular user. This currently relates only to one of our sales reports, in which we allow sales reports by rep to be pulled up by the logged in user. Finally, the attached file as allows you to change the name. If the report will be attached to an email list if you were to download and email it. Certain reports, like a job costing report or a sales report, will simply have information that defaults what the report is titled. Other reports, like an invoice report or an estimate report, have a little bit of additional logic that you don't see on this screen that will show the estimate or order number, or perhaps some other information. Those will appear after the name of the report itself. So if you have several different invoices, it may behoove you to change the name of the report to a consistent invoice. So that way when your customers receive a PDF in an email, they don't see all these terms that don't make any sense to them. You can make changes to most of these areas by clicking the edit button on the far right. Any area that opens up with gray or a checkbox means that you can change it. For instance, you can't change the timestamp of the last person to edit the report, but you can change the name of the report, the location in which the report appears, some behavior on it, like showing all pages or activating and deactivating it, and the attached file as name. Make your change and click the Save This to update it, or the Cancel button to revert your update. The reports themselves were categorized under report type. This list of reports comes from your report type objects list. Many of these you'll see are currently on your site. You can create new ones by adding a new choice here in the bottom gray row. I've added one called Custom Reports with my own name, just to make it stand out. If you have the report type as active, then it will be visible and available across its respective modules. And if you have the Show and Reports menu set to Yes, then that report type will be available within the Reports module. For instance, our accounting reports are set to appear in here, and we see it as a subfolder for them. However, if we look at our estimate report, we don't see a subfolder listed in here, and that's because we have the No option selected here in the Show and Reports menu list. We recommend not changing any of this information here from the ones that currently exist. Adding and making reports available within this screen, for instance, an estimate or an order report, will probably cause some problems for you, as they're currently designed to be opened up from within their estimate and then pull data from the estimate that you open it from, and the same goes for orders. If you were to set them up to appear within the reports module, then you open up an invoice report, and you try to have it default to the invoice that's currently open, and of course you're not opening it from an invoice, so nothing would appear. There's a bit of additional behavior that can be customized with reports, and that can be found within the Global Settings menu. Under the company settings, you'll see that you have a company that you can select and provide information for. And you can also select a report logo. If the report is built to show a logo, for instance, an invoice or an estimate report, then this is the file that they'll see in the upper left corner or wherever it's set to display at. The guidelines to make sure that it displays appropriately and doesn't change in size by scaling or skewing comes from the dimension lists and guidelines here. Do note that they don't have to be those exact sizes. However, if you want optimal behavior, you will want to try to follow those guidelines to make sure that your images are uploaded correctly. Additionally, we have a reports submenu here in our admin setup. Midnight itself is not an email server. It's not an email client, and it doesn't try to become one. Therefore, emails that are sent out of Midnight are not necessarily stored. If you send an email to a client, for instance, you send an invoice to a customer through an order, then a log will be made on that customer record saying that an email was sent with an attachment, but you won't be able to pull up what the email actually was. What we suggest doing is utilizing this default VCC. We suggest creating an email account on your site, perhaps in your email domain or directory, so that way there's one easily recognizable as coming out of Midnight. For instance, from midnight at yourcompanyname.com. In that case, a duplicate email of everything that's sent out to your clients or internally will be sent to this default receiving address as well. That way, if you have users that are reporting as an email having not gone out, there's a file attachment missing, something was intentionally deleted, etc., you do have a way to find the email that was originally sent, and you can do with it what you need to make sure that everything continues to operate as necessary. You also have your default email signature. This is a global email signature that applies to all emails. In this, you can add your text and your other general information. However, you cannot import images. To go one step beyond this, if you go into your profile, while you're logged in and clicking Edit Profile brings you to a screen in which you can customize your own personal signature instead. If you have this box checked, then you'll utilize your own signature, even if there is nothing here rather than the global one. And finally, the ways to get some of these reports out include entering the specific module that your report would be accessible from, pulling it up as necessary, either by selecting it from the reports list like we saw in here, or if you're, say, within a job or a customer, opening the reports menu and double-clicking the report in question. From here, you'll see an email button in the upper right corner. Clicking this will default information for the two based on some contact info within the Details tab. The BCC will be default to the admin menu's global option. The From may default to you as the currently logged in user. And for the contact select dropdown, you'll see that you can pick different contact information from the customer that's selected, as long as they have an applicably selected work email. And the From as well can be customized. This list will include different employees and will reference their business email if you were to select one of them. You'll see the subject line in this case has been defaulted to invoice with an underscore and then my order number. And the attachment has done pretty much the same thing. Through this process, you can add other files, such as contracts or group images, as well as plug in a message, knowing that if you had a default email signature applied, then that signature would be listed in here. As for the report itself, now that we've accessed one, I'll be closing this one down and making sure that we stay only in one at a time. When you're preparing to create or modify reports, we do suggest that you only ever keep one report open simultaneously, never more than one. Having more than one report open in the report designer or in the report creator can cause issues. As you hit save in one screen, it may save in both. What that could mean is if you have, say, an invoice report and a sales report open simultaneously, and you click save in the invoice report, then your sales report becomes your invoice. And that would mean that your sales report may no longer exist. So you just need to be very careful there and not having more than one report open at the same time. In order to create a report, you simply need to be in any report and click the Create Report button here in the upper right. Doing so brings up a report generation screen in which you can fill out a report name and display name, as well as a clone from selector. We always suggest that you clone a report from another, as described earlier, because if you don't, then you'll be creating a report with no data associated to it. see here in this list, our reports for selection are organized by report type and the report name. Once you select your report that you'd like to utilize as your clone source, for instance, if I select my customer list report, actually we'll pick a different one here. Select an estimate report. And we'll call it estimate. Estimate price, and then a 0 item. In here, we can begin to make the changes needed to make our report do what you like. However, there's a few things we suggest doing before that. At this point now, our report has been created and given a unique ID number, which can be seen in the web URL. And we can see that we're in the report designer. If you have familiar with SQL development, you may be familiar with a designer that looks like this. However, if you're not, then this may come across as rather daunting, but it's not too difficult if you just need to make simple changes. To start, we always suggest going to File and Save As. What this does is it creates a backup of your report. It's very easy to do something to your report that may cause an issue. If you do save a backup, then you can very easily pull it back in and undo your changes to make the report accessible again. Additionally, if something were to be, say, deleted or modified in such a way that you don't understand how to reverse, then reloading in a backup is the quickest way to get all that in. For example, if I were to try to be adjusting some of this information and I accidentally deleted an entire block of text, I can simply go to File, Open Report, select my estimate report backup that I just created, hit Open, and once everything loads back in, like you see, hit the Save button or Save Report button, and you'll see that everything has been saved back to its prior standing. After you've made your changes to your report, you can click File and Exit to safely exit the report from the editor view, and then you can go back to using them however you need for printing, exporting, etc. In this case now, the report that we just created can be found within our estimate. If we expand our reports list, we'll see our estimate price, no 0 items. And if we double click into it, we'll be brought straight into it to do what we need to do. From here, if we need to make changes to the report that already exists, then we'll hit the Edit Report button to be brought back into the designer. And we can make our changes as needed, clicking Save to finish them. And then once we're satisfied, we'll do another File, Save As, and create another backup of the report. That way any changes we've made don't become lost. Additionally, you see how quickly and easily I was able to reload in the backup. If there is an option to do it faster, we always suggest doing it that way, as long as it's correct, and this is effectively what we do here with the Midnight team. If you were to have a user break a report and you need us to reload a backup to actually create that backup and get your report back to its prior standing, it could take us a while. If we can't do that during live office use hours, it also takes us a while to run the backup itself and then identify that the report is in a safe standing before we can actually try to upload and implement that one. If you create the report backup file yourself, it only takes about 10 seconds to load that back in. So you can see what's a big time saver here. far as report customization goes, there's not too much I'll get into, simply because there is a lot to discuss in the report designer. If we expand it all the way, we'll see that there's different colored bands with different text blocks within them. There's options here at the top which kind of look like a Microsoft Word menu. Also, if we were to look at the documentation details here on the far right side, then we'll see details for the report itself. Specifically, we'll see things like page dimensions, page margins, report behavior, such as whether it's not something turned off. And depending on what you click, there will be different properties. For instance, the location of a text component on a particular page, the size and scaling of an image behavior, or if you were to select a data band or a header band or something, what pages those bands should appear on, etc. There's quite a bit in here, and I do cover that all in a second training session geared more towards the ins and outs of each specific area. Do note that the simple things can mostly be done from the header. For instance, if you want to change the text of a report, for instance, modifying the color of it a little bit, applying an italicized to a text block text, centering something, or right aligning something, and applying a border. You can do so with ease by just clicking the container and then applying the appropriate level of modification. Additionally, if you need to change out what data is displayed on the report, you can see that all either on the report listed within these areas that have the brackets around them. You can change these up by double-clicking into them and selecting from the list of data columns the data that you're actually interested in displaying. If you want to just change the text of a text box itself instead, you can double-click into the text container, and where you see expression here, instead of data column, you can change what you have, and click the OK button to commit that. To go one step further, the data elements themselves, or data columns as they're referred to as, can be found within your dictionary under your data sources. And depending on what type of data you're looking up, you may find it within one of the various data sources that are attached to the report. For instance, this estimate report, which is pulling from one of our standard ones, includes header information, such as customer data, the logo that's used for the image, generalized totals of pricing information, postage details, etc. The estimate detail list will show the line item info, such as the service name, base price, unit price, and line total. And then if there's postage information on your estimate, then you'll see that the postage list handler will include all of that as well, for the postage rate, postage quantity, etc. To get these on the report, you can either create a text box by clicking this button here with an A on it, drawing out your text container, and either adding in a label or by selecting your data column for it. You can highlight and select multiple ones by clicking and dragging to create a selection menu. Additionally, if you have your text in containers like a panel or something, you can click and move that entire panel around, and that moves everything within it. You can make adjustments to more than one container at the same time by clicking and selecting them both. If you hold the Control key down while you click, you'll select each option or each container that you click. You can make your changes accordingly. And finally, if you need to, you can just click and drag the text column from the data source right into the report, noting that doing this will give you a label as well as the data column. I select these all and hit the delete key, then I get rid of them. And just like you could in Microsoft Excel, you can highlight one or multiple fields and hit Control-C to copy, then Control-V to paste, clicking it to drop it where you want it to appear. As far as other changes that you can make to the report, if you want to line things up nicely, you can easily do so by adding the data through the Layout tab, selecting your container or containers, and hitting the Align button here to pick where they're being aligned to. For instance, all aligned to the left, all aligned to the right side, to the top, etc., depending on what you're looking at aligning. If you need to change how your data is displayed, then you'll likely be looking in a data band. In the case of this report example, we don't want to show our customer services that have 0 priced items. If I double click into the data band, then I'm brought to a screen in which I can select some sort controls, such as if I want to sort alphabetically by service name, if I want to sort incrementally by unit price, etc. Or if I want to do some stages, so I'll sort by service name and then have a subsort by unit price in case two services with the same name exist and they're priced differently. I can also go into my filters. If I add a filter, I can add a control that says if a particular data column, such as my quantity, is equal to 0, is not equal to 0, then show it. We can add filter to add multiple layers. Doing this could allow us to build a filter that says if our line total and our quantity are both not equal to 0, then show. And depending on the data type that we're working with, either be it a numeric field, a date field, or a text string, you'll have different options that you can select for the filter to work with. For the string field, you'll be able to select general text options like whether or not it contains, begins with, or even exists. If we're to select a numeric option, then your choices change to include equal to, not equal to, greater than, less than, or equal to, etc. If you select a date time, you get to plug in a date range or a date, and you can put in either equal to, greater than, between, and then have two different dates. And Boolean, which isn't typically used, but is either a check for true or false, and is utilized for things like checkbox filters. For instance, if your report is taxable, and you want to search only taxable information on that report, you could use the true false to simply say if this is taxable, then show it. With all that, we've done the basics to get our report ready to go. Again, I'll click Save to save my report. Do a file save as. And I'll update my report name here. I'll put in 0 items with a date, indicating when I made the change. That way, if I need to double back and look at the report in the previous state, I can easily access it. And I'll hit File and get out. When you exit the report, there won't be data to really display. So you'll need to exit the report entirely, and then go back into the reports list and double click to open it. You can see the changes I made, the colors specifically, and if there were line items that would be omitted, they won't appear if their quantity and extended price total both happen to be 0. And the final thing for reports includes the other ways to get them out. If you were to look at a sales report, you may need to get that data out in a variety of ways. Just like we saw in the estimate report, you can always do the email to save it and send it as a PDF. You can print your report as a PDF. Doing so brings you with a screen that you can click to print it and send it to either your PDF printer or to your specific printer. And then you can make your adjustments such as quality and scaling if needed. So in this case, we can also do a print with preview, which allows us to check what the page would look like, or we can do a print without preview to send it directly to our printer, skipping a step as far as the print to PDF option goes. We can also save the report in a variety of ways. You can save it as a PDF directly rather than printing it to a PDF. And the other common export or save methods we find are the Microsoft Excel file and the data file. If you save it as a data file, this gives you the choice of saving as a CSV. And this is useful for your customer list reports for marketing integration. In this case, just make sure your report type is a CSV. Your separator is a comma or pipe or whatever you need it to be, and that you're pushing out your data only. Once you click OK, you'll be given a file that represents what it is you're trying to push out. And do note that while you can do this to pretty much any report, you may need the report to be specifically built so that way it shows info as you would expect it to appear. For instance, a report like this has a unique batch of columns that may not necessarily look appropriate when pushed out to a CSV document. You may need to rename the column headers accordingly so that way everything gets pushed out with column names you expect them to be. Alternatively, if we save the report as an Excel file, we recommend that you make sure the options under your settings list include exporting your data only and you turn off object formatting. If you have these turned on, if you have the export data turned off and or the object formatting set to on, then the report will try to be extracted out into Excel and it will try to mimic the look of that report, meaning that your columns will not be able or not be open for interaction. In this example, if I pull up my Excel file, then when everything's set to go, my file opens up, I'll have a nice, neat display of everything that I'm looking for. Alternatively, because we save it as an Excel file or a CSV, we can do what we need to either manipulate it on the outside, email it, etc. So that way we can have our files set up and pushed out as we need. And if you need to rearrange how things appear, then within that report designer that we were just in, you can make your changes by rearranging how everything's displayed, such as moving columns from left to right, resizing them for width, adding new columns in, or deleting ones that don't need to exist. You can do that just by clicking and dragging, moving them around. So it's pretty easy to get the report to do what you need to do in preparation for extraction. the report should be pushed out. If you're like this, based on the current formatting, and note that if you want the columns to be tighter, all you have to do is remove the spaces in between them in the designer. And if you want one line per instance, then you may need to change that grouping information. That way this line for the grouping component will appear on its own column along with everything else. That concludes everything for today's training on Midnight Reporting. If you have any questions, feel free to email us at support@printreach.com, just like we see here at the top. Alternatively, if you have to call in for any assistance, you dial into 425-828-9495, extension 2. Thank you for attending today's training, and we'll see you all in the next one.